Hi, everyone. Welcome to MEDENT Minutes, the podcast that explores EHR optimization and how practices can excel in value-based care. I'm Megan Chapman, the Director of Marketing and Communications here at MEDENT, and today we are exploring the world of cybersecurity with some of my colleagues, our HIPAA Compliance Officer, Tina Tomasso, and Project Manager, Matt Del Favero. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we start, I was joking around that we got to do some background checks here and make sure we have the real Tina and Matt here with us. But I just wanted to kind of go over your background here with MEDENT. How long have you been working with MEDENT, and what are some of your responsibilities here?
Go ahead, Tina.
I have been with MEDENT for 22 years. I've worn a couple different hats in that time. I do the HIPAA compliance and the security compliance within the company. So I basically run the annual meetings that we do for each, in addition to several other items that I do.
Yeah, so I'm Matt Del Favero. I'm a project manager here at MEDENT. I've been here almost 20 years now. My focus in project management has been on pretty much anything prescription related, because that involves a lot of certifications such as e-prescribing. I've overseen a lot of our security certifications. That really started with our what's called NIST 853 cybersecurity certification. That's something we did for our EPCS certification. And yes, I'm using the word certification a lot here. And our high trust certification, which we're going to go over in just a bit. And I, along with others, work with Tina on our ONC certifications.
Man, they don't make things easy with these acronyms and.
No, yeah, there's a lot of them.
You're not in the tech world. Sounds like you're speaking a bit of another language here.
Yeah.
I think we all know why cybersecurity is so important, especially in healthcare. But I know that healthcare has always been kind of a lucrative and attractive target for hackers, and we've seen that cyber attacks are actually getting a lot more sophisticated. So we at MEDENT want to kind of use this opportunity in talking with Tina and Matt to kind of discuss, what is MEDENT's role in helping clients, ensure that patient data is protected, but also things that we recommend. I think it's kind of important that we make that distinction between MEDENT and maybe an IT team or something like that. So could you just talk a little bit about, I guess let's start with MEDENT and our certifications and what they really mean for clients?
Yeah, so the big one is the high trust certification. If anybody's not familiar with that, the high trust certification is a security audit that's kind of become an industry standard. It's an all-encompassing certification audit, however you want to present it. It covers software, it covers network, it covers hardware, it covers physical access to the building, it covers processes and procedures that we have in place. And the processes that we do for the certification, working with our certifier, it's very thorough. It takes several months just to do the certification. And it covers a lot of things, such as software. So with software, we're talking about firewalls, antivirus. Anytime MEDENT has programming done, there are certain security procedures that must be followed by the programmers. With hardware, there's PCs and servers that we have to make sure that they're all encrypted. Network access is constantly monitored by our sysadmin team, our IT team. Physical, that's our building. There's cameras, there's fob access, all that's monitored all the time. And that's really barely scratching the surface of what's required. And for the certification to be able to pass a certification, it's really not enough to say, claim that we do it. They're very thorough. They go through everything. We have to prove in detail that we're doing all these things that we attest to. Just a basic example of that would be, say, like our antivirus, our spyware. There are logs that get created. Those constantly have to be monitored. and we have to prove that they're monitored. So when they're monitored, it's actually documented. So we have to monitor it. We have to document that we monitor it. We have to show that we're documenting that these are monitored. And so it's very, very thorough, very, very involved. Another example is we actually hire a company that does what's called a penetration test. And that penetration test is essentially what a hacker might do to try to get access to our network, our computers, our building. They actually do things to try to get physical access to the inside of our building. They're very thorough.
Mhm.
And so again, I could go on for 2 weeks going into detail about, everything that's done for this, but that's just kind of a high level overview, just to show that this certification is truly an all encompassing, very thorough.
And how often do we go through that certification process? Is it annually?
So this is annual. Yep. We're doing this annually. We've been doing this the last 2 years. Early on, I mentioned the other cybersecurity certification we do. It's called NIST 853. That's kind of a government designed certification that we started doing several years ago. That was required for electronic prescription and controlled substances. There was the DEA required, because we host data, they required that we go through an audit, a security audit. And the company we work with, they do what's called the NIST 853 cybersecurity cert. And we've been doing that for several years. That's done every other year because that's what's required for EPCS. And then with the HITRUST, we're doing this every single year. So several months out of the year, we're working with our auditor to make sure we're meeting all the requirements that is required for HITRUST.
Right. And now some of these, like you said, are, required for things like EPCS, but
Mhm.
HITRUST goes above and beyond any requirements, right? That's just something that MEDENT was kind of passionate about doing to, really make sure that we have that certification and, prove that we are making that investment into cybersecurity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this was something we decided to do. It's not, that like you stated, when we needed to do for EPCS, we had to do this one. The HITRUST was something we chose to do, and it was, as you said, it's a commitment, and it really is. It's a time commitment. And the good news is, that the neat thing when we started doing this was the things that were required, we were already doing for the most part. There's very little that we did because of HITRUST. We were already doing a lot of things that HITRUST required. So we were kind of ahead of the game when it came to that. So when it actually came to working with the vendor, it was like, oh, we're already doing this, we're already doing that, we're already doing this. And there's very little adjustments we had to make to meet the requirements of HITRUST, even though it's so detailed and so thorough. We were pretty much meeting all the requirements that we needed to make before we even started that process.
Yeah. Now, I know that I touched earlier on how, a lot of these hackers and cyber attacks are just getting more and more sophisticated. And I know that we recently switched actually to auto encrypting our emails. And I wanted to ask Tina, why was this something that MEDENT chose to do? What should clients be looking out for when receiving and replying to these emails? Could you talk a little bit about the auto encryption?
Absolutely. So annually, we do a security risk analysis, an SRA, and we just kind of review where we're at, where we've come since the past year to improve the security items that we have. And in our latest one that we did, we realized we have this capability with Outlook email where we can auto encrypt. And the decision was made that any department that touches PHI, that has anything to do with PHI, that patient's protected health information, we wanted to make sure we were auto encrypting those emails. That allows us to prevent any mistakes where PHI might be mistakenly emailed unsecurely to a client or a vendor. This allows us, no matter what, when an email is sent, an email is replied to, that email is encrypted, whatever data is in there. And that allows us, it just gives us another layer of security. So a
Great.
client, the initial email they get is a notification that they have received a secure email. They then need to click in there. There's going to be a button that I believe says view message that will take them to a secure portal where they will log in to be able to see that message. And they should reply from within that secure portal, because that also allows the response to be secured on the receiving end when it comes to us. It's encrypted as well. They should not be replying to the initial message notification that says they have an email. One thing that it might be clients may need to work with their IT team on is if there is a firewall that might be blocking these secure emails from getting in, or for some clients, they actually need to whitelist our domain, that medent.com part of our email. And again, that is something their IT team would work with them on. That does allow to make sure that the email is getting through to the client's inbox.
Okay. And, this might sound silly, but can we make the distinction? Some people, I think, hear IT and assume that MEDENT is part of that team for them. Can you guys talk a little bit about the difference between, what we do for clients and what an IT team would do?
Yeah, so that wouldn't be us. We're certainly not the IT people for anybody. But we do have references in our manual. I shouldn't say references, but there are examples of IT teams that may be able to help out practices in different areas. If I'm not mistaken, they're broken down by state. Each place is unique, so it's important that each practice works with an IT team to come up with their own plan to determine what is important and what's required to meet the needs of the security for their practice.
And so, going back, Tina, to emails and the importance of why we decided to auto encrypt our emails, what did we want to also remind clients as far as sending, PHI securely? I know that we have our online support forms. Can you tell me what kind of constitutes a patient identifier and how clients should be submitting that kind of information to us?
Absolutely. So if a client is corresponding with us via email, it is important that anything that has a patient identifier is sent securely. And there are 18 items that CMS has identified as a patient identifier. It's important to be aware that it's not just a patient name that ties a patient to their medical record. It can be an address, it can be a phone number, it can be an account number because it is specific to that system, that client's record. So any of those items that are a potential patient identifier should be sent securely. If the practice has secure email, that's how they're sending it. If they don't have secure email, the easiest way really is to use our secure portal on the website. They can fill out the form, fill in anything they want. They can attach attachments, any Word, Excel documents, things like that. And then it automatically creates the triage on our system for our support department to handle right away. It's also ideal too, because sometimes, if you're working with someone and they happen to be out for a while, this also allows maybe a better response or an earlier response than if you're waiting for something because it's sitting in someone's inbox, unfortunately. So we really do try to, I think the secure portal is probably the most efficient way, the best way to submit anything, especially if there might be PHI rather than email, although email is acceptable.
Okay. And now I also wanted to ask, what are some of the things that we encourage our own employees to do when looking at an email in their inbox? I think it's important that, how do we identify maybe security threats like phishing emails and things? What is some examples of suspicious behavior?
So we are currently in the midst of doing our annual security training with every employee in the company. And one of the areas we are focusing a lot on during this training is emails. Because as you stated before, hackers and such are getting more sophisticated. And email is probably the easiest loophole and easiest way to infiltrate a system. So we encourage employees, anytime they get an email in their inbox, that they're paying attention to that from. Even though it might be a name that you recognize, the name sounds legitimate, you are still looking at the from address to make sure that the email address hasn't been spoofed in any way, that it is the user's, the sender's real address. And it's something to really pay attention to. We've gotten a couple emails in our inbox that it's just maybe one character off, or there's an S added at the end, something that you might not really pick up on. So it really is important that you're paying attention to that. We also encourage them within the body of an email, if you notice a lot of spelling errors, or there's grammatical errors, or there's links in there and they're like urgent, you have to click on this, or urgent, make sure you do this. Those should be red flags. Those are emails too that you really don't want to interact with unless you're positive that it is a legitimate email. We also encourage them, like if they've gotten an email from someone and it is someone they worked with in the past, but the email it's been a while since they've worked with them, or it's not an email they're expecting, is to call that person. Don't respond to the email, don't interact with that email, but just call the person and ask, is this a legitimate email? And we have had some instances where they're like, nope, our email has been attacked, don't respond to that. We're aware of it, and thanks for letting us know. So those are all items that it's really important, the inbound, don't just blindly follow whatever an email tells you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of the cybersecurity training that we've been doing here with our employees, I wanted to mention, why is training so important? Do we recommend that practices do, a regular training for their own staff on these matters? And how often do you think people should be reviewing these policies and procedures for their own practice?
We do training annually, and it was a decision that we made just to make sure it is something everybody is always thinking about. It's a good refresher for everyone. And it always seems in every meeting we have, like, even though it might be something that they've heard repeatedly, like all of a sudden they have a specific example that has now affected them, or that they just interacted where maybe they hadn't before, and it does ring a bell. And that's really what we're looking for everyone to be able to do, is to just keep those policies, those procedures in the back of your mind, and maybe something rings a bell when you come across it. So we do this same training on an employee's first day, their initial onboarding, and then we do it annually with everybody in the company. And that starts with the president, Gary Cuthbert, down to the newest hire that may have just started 2 days ago. They will still go through the same exact training. Because again, we want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. It is something, I would encourage practices to do. It's something, ideally practices themselves are doing a security risk analysis every year. That is a part of a HIPAA compliance, is making sure you're doing that. And hopefully, like, that is spawning, okay, well, we're going to do annual training with our employees too. Again, it's just a good way to make sure everybody is always thinking about these things, because it is getting, we don't live in an ideal world anymore. Like, it is getting harder and harder, and you have to stay ahead of things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely definitely seems a lot more prevalent these days with breaches that do happen. And I think it's also important that this is not something we require by any means, and it's something that I think a practices IT team would work on them with. But I think it's not always just about prevention. I think it's kind of important to have a disaster recovery plan in place should a breach happen. Is that something that you guys would agree with?
100%. I think even if you look at like a lot of the like HIPAA fines that have come across from breaches or whatever, a lot of those fines are based on that the company or the business, the practice was aware of something and didn't do anything to address it. A breach is going to happen. Something is going to happen. I'm not going to say it's inevitable, but it's out there. So the important thing is that you are, trying to eliminate the risks where you can. And if something does happen, you're immediately addressing that and putting stop checks in place and evolving your policies and procedures to prevent that from happening again.
Yeah. And, in addition to, not only are we having our annual trainings, where we kind of sit down face to face and review these things, but I know here at MEDENT, we typically get these quarterly emails from our IT department, just kind of reminding us, hey, stay vigilant. Here's some new things to look out for. We're constantly, I would say every 2 to 3 months here, getting these reminders and updates from our own IT team here at MEDENT to, stay on top of things because things are changing, all the time. And
Absolutely.
there's just all sorts of new ways that hackers are trying to get at that information. And I think that's important too. I wanted to discuss, in addition to email spam protection, I mean, what else should medical practices be implementing? What are some other recommendations here for a security plan, things that we do here? I know Matt was talking about things like firewalls, but there's also things like two-factor authentication and things like that. Do we have other recommendations as well?
That is really where I would recommend that they work with an IT team, where they do a security risk analysis, where they identify where they may have gaps in place that they can help plug or any loopholes that they can help close. And it really is important to understand that it's not a one and done thing either, right? Like Matt said, we do high trust annually. We do a security risk analysis annually. These are things you need to be constantly staying on top of, not think, okay, well, I did that, we're done. No more need to worry about it. It is, our policies, our procedures evolve and they change too as things are changing that we need to deal with. So it's important too that they're aware. They're working with an IT team. They're staying on top of things. They aren't just being complacent.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Just
I do want. Oh, go ahead.
Just to add to that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Just to add to that real quick. There are a couple things in MEDENT. The two-factor authentication was mentioned. MEDENT, if people aren't aware, does have the option for two-factor authentication. So that would be, you put in your password, you log into MEDENT, and then at that point you have to put in a code that's generated by an app that's on your phone. Really easy to set up, really easy to enable by the individual users, or even at the practice level, you can enforce it to enforce that everybody uses it. Really easy to set up, standard two-factor authentication method used by pretty much everybody, very secure. So that is an option within MEDENT itself. But to Tina's point that, really the processes and procedures in place should be something that's reviewed with an IT team to make sure that they're meeting all the security requirements that they should be meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just the language can be confusing, and that's where you definitely want to use a specialist, and you want to use that experienced staff outside of MEDENT, an IT company, to help you develop and execute and monitor your own security plan, because every practice is different. I'm sure we've got different specialties, different sizes, different devices you might be using. So I'm sure that that's where the IT companies really come in handy, and it's obviously a vital investment that you really should be making. I just wanted to say, as a reminder, our role in security includes that MEDENT is secure. Our certifications are for our software application, and HIPAA compliancy with external MEDENT interfaces, and a backup monitoring is something that is also that we do here at MEDENT as well. And we actually we have some training, we have some ransomware training videos, on our tutorials page that employees can watch and learn how to protect themselves from security breaches. We certainly want to be an ally in this, but we just want to make that distinction that, people really should have an IT company who helps them make that secure plan for their practice.
Absolutely. We've done as much as we can, and it's something, like I said, we keep working on to making sure we're secure, we're HIPAA compliant, and it's up to practices to do that as well on their end.
Yeah. So is there anything else you guys wanted to add to, this kind of cyber hygiene list? I know I was joking that, personal hygiene, you have habits like, hand washing, and cyber hygiene is like just as important these days. So, these are are there any other routine actions that people should be, kind of taking to protect against these threats?
I think I said it before, but it really is. It's staying vigilant. It's not getting complacent. It is. You're right. It is like a personal hygiene. You want to make it a habit that you're doing things securely, that you're checking an email, that you are sending things securely. You want to make it a habit, second nature, that you're following security policies, HIPAA policies, things like that.
Yeah, it sounds silly, but it really is. It's true. Yeah. I mean, these are things that you really want to be doing on a regular basis, not just kind of relying on things in the background, but it's really up to each person, each individual to stay on top of things.
Yeah, to a point that was made earlier, things are always changing as well. I mentioned earlier that the certification we do is really tailored to what we do, and it's going to be any security review is going to be unique to each practice. But because things are always changing, hackers, their methods are always changing, things like that. It's not enough to just keep doing the same thing every year. It's reviewing what you're doing, every year, or whatever the frequency is you determine is best to know what changes have happened as far as methods that hackers might use to attempt to try to access, your network or your PCs, and just to show that we're doing that is, the high trust, excuse me, the high trust certification is updated every year. So we're doing it every year, but it's not the same thing every year. There was probably a third of what we did this year was different than what we did last year, and another third was similar but changes. And that's because again, going back to what I said earlier about the hackers, that they're just changing, how they do it. They're not getting complacent. So we need to not be complacent as well.
Yeah, these threats are not going away anytime soon. I think that's pretty clear. Especially in healthcare, you hear how healthcare is such an attractive target, and it's unfortunate, but it's the reality. And I do want to do one more point before I let you guys go. But how important is something like transparency if someone is hacked or there is a breach? How should people be communicating that with partners or their EHR system, things like that? Is transparency just as important in something like this?
Oh, I would say
it
most
is,
definitely.
Yeah.
It's not anything you're going to hide. It's going to come out eventually, and it's important that one of the things I do stress in our security meetings is make someone aware as soon as it happens, so you can address it as soon as it happens. And you do want to be transparent. You don't want to hide it. You don't want to hide behind it. You want to notify the people that are going to be affected as soon as you are able to, for several reasons. But transparency is never a bad thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything else you guys want to say? Thank you so much for joining us. I just think this is such an important topic, and hopefully people kind of understand a little bit more of our role and an IT company's role, and just some of these recommendations that we have to stay cyber safe.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this is a great discussion, and if nothing else, I hope it prompts maybe somebody who isn't doing everything that they should be doing to do everything they should be doing. Hiring an IT team, working with people to ensure that their security is top notch as much as possible. That all you got to do is open a newspaper. I guess that's not a thing anymore. Go online and look at the news and see all the things that are happening. It's every day. There's a new story about a major hack that's happened. So that's certainly an important thing. And again, I just hope this maybe prompts people to reevaluate what they're doing and make sure that they're doing everything that they can.
Yeah, and have these discussions. Have these discussions. I think, network with people. I think all of us are on the same team here, as far as our goal of wanting to protect everyone's data, right? So I think it's important if people have questions or you're not sure where to start, reach out. These are just important discussions to have. And, we're certainly just trying to play our part in helping others stay safe. And I think that discussions like this are really valuable. So hopefully others found it valuable too. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining today. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
I
Megan.
appreciate it. This is
Thanks,
a
Matt.
good conversation to have. Thank you.